The Meridian didn't slow down for anyone. Not for the rain hammering the windows on a Friday night. Not for the couple at table four who couldn't agree on anything. Not for the new busboy who kept dropping forks. The restaurant moved like a living thing. Plates spinning, voices layering over each other, the smell of butter and garlic and expensive wine filling every corner of the room. And right in the middle of all of it was Crystal. She moved like she'd been born in that dining room. 2 plates balanced on her left arm, 1 in her right hand, her black uniform pressed sharp, her locks pinned back, her smile ready before she even reached the table. She knew the menu the way some people know prayers, by heart, without thinking. She knew which tables needed extra bread before they asked. She knew which guests wanted small talk and which ones wanted silence. She had been doing this for 3 years at the Meridian, and she was good at it. Really good. Tonight, though, was different from every other night. Tonight, Mr. Donovan, the restaurant manager, a short man with sharp eyes and a clipboard he carried like a weapon, had pulled Crystal aside before service started and told her something she had been waiting 3 years to hear. "The promotion is basically yours," he'd said, straightening his tie. "Corporate is watching tonight's service. Don't give me a reason to change my mind." Crystal had nodded. She hadn't smiled too wide. She hadn't made a big deal of it. She just went back to work. But inside, something was singing. Head waitress. Her own section. A real salary instead of tips. Benefits. Stability. The kind of job she could call her mother about without her mother saying, "When are you going to find something better?" She had worked for this. Sacrificed for this. Picked up double shifts and stayed late. And smiled through rude customers and cold soup complaints and everything in between. Tonight was supposed to be the night it all paid off. Table 7 needed water. Table 12 was ready to order. Table 2 wanted the dessert menu. Crystal was everywhere. It was somewhere between the salad course and the entrees, somewhere in that loud, hot, beautiful chaos that she saw it. A small shoe, just one, sticking out from behind the tall potted plant near the wall between table 7 and the server station. A white sneaker, maybe size 5, with a Velcro strap that had come undone. Crystal stopped. She set down her tray on the nearest empty surface and walked toward the planter slowly, the way you walk when something feels wrong, but you don't know how wrong yet. She stepped around the side of the plant and looked down. A little boy was sitting on the floor with his knees pulled up to his chest. He couldn't have been older than 6. He was wearing a tiny white dress shirt with the collar crooked and dark trousers that were too big for him. His face was wet. His eyes were closed. He was pressing a phone against his chest, a phone with a cracked black screen, and his lips were moving without any sound coming out. Crystal crouched down immediately. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey, sweetie, look at me." The boy opened his eyes. They were big and dark and swimming with tears. And the second they found Crystal's face, his whole body shuddered like he'd been holding his breath for a very long time. "E whispered." "Hi," Crystal said back. "What's your name?" A pause. Then, "Noah." "Okay, Noah." She kept her voice slow and warm, the way you talk to something frightened. "How long have you been sitting here?" He looked at his phone. "My battery died," he said, like that answered question. "I was calling my dad." Crystal felt something drop in her stomach. "Where's your dad?" Noah looked up at her with eyes that were too sad for a 6-year-old face. He said, "He'd be right back," he whispered. He said to sit down and wait, and he'd be right back. His chin wobbled. But I waited and waited, and I got scared because there were so many people, and I couldn't find him, and my phone died, and... "Okay." Crystal put her hand gently on his shoulder. "Okay, I've got you. You're safe." She looked up over the top of the planter. The dining room was full and roaring. Nobody had noticed. Nobody had looked twice at a planter near the wall, where a small child had been sitting on the floor, alone and terrified, for God knows how long. Her chest tightened with something she didn't have a name for yet. She looked back at Noah. "Do you know your dad's name?" "Marcus." Noah said, "Marcus Ellison." She didn't know the name. She would later. But right now she just filed away and started thinking fast. She needed to find this man. She needed to get Noah somewhere quiet and safe while she looked. She needed to. Crystal. The voice cut through the noise like a knife. She stood up slowly and turned around. Mr. Donovan was standing 10 feet away with his clipboard and his sharp eyes and an expression that said he had been watching her for the last 2 minutes. Table 12 has been waiting 8 minutes for their entrees, he said. And Table 2 is asking for you specifically. There's a child back here, Crystal said. He's alone. His father left him and... Call the host stand. They'll handle it. He was already turning away. Get back on the floor, Crystal. Tonight of all nights. She looked at Mr. Donovan's back. Then she looked down at Noah, who had grabbed the hem of her uniform with 2 small fists and was looking up at her with eyes that asked a question he didn't have the words for yet. Are you going to leave too? Crystal took a slow breath, and she sat back down on the floor, beside him. Mr. Donovan turned back around. He looked at Crystal sitting on the floor next to Planter, her uniform pressed against the cold tiles, a small boy tucked against her side, and his expression moved through several different emotions before landing on something flat and final. Crystal. His voice was quiet now. That was worse than loud. If you don't get up right now, we are going to have a very different conversation tomorrow morning. I hear you, Crystal said. She wasn't rude. She wasn't loud. She looked him dead in the eye and said it simply, the way you say something you mean, but I'm not leaving him. Mr. Donovan stared at her for a long moment. Then he wrote something on his clipboard, turned on his heel, and walked away. Crystal felt the promotion leave the room with him. She knew it. She felt it go the same way you feel a door close in a house you love. Not a slam, just a soft, certain click. 3 years. Double shifts. Staying late. Smiling through everything. Gone. Just like that. She looked at Noah. He was watching her with those big, wet eyes, still gripping her uniform. Okay, she said, more to herself than to him. Okay. She untied her apron from around her waist and wrapped it gently around his small shoulders like a blanket. It was too big for him. He looked a little lost inside it. Are you hungry? He shook his head. Are you cold? A small nod. All right. She stood up and she held out her hand. Come on then. We're going to find your dad. Noah looked at her hand for just a second, that 1 second where a child decides whether to trust you, and then he put his tiny hand in hers. They moved to the dining room together. Crystal walking with purpose, Noah pressed close against her leg. A few guests glanced over. One woman touched her husband's arm and nodded toward them. Crystal didn't stop. She walked to the host stand first, asked Maya, the young woman working the door, whether anyone had come in asking about a lost child. Maya shook her head. Nobody's asked me anything. Crystal scanned the waiting area. A couple sat on the bench near the door. A man in a gray coat was checking his watch. No one looked like a father searching for his son. She walked Noah through the swinging kitchen doors next. The kitchen was a wall of noise and heat. Chefs calling out orders, pans hitting burners. Someone cursing under their breath near the grill. Heads turned. A sous chef named Darius raised an eyebrow. You okay? He called over to Crystal. Looking for someone, she said. Has anyone come through here asking about a little boy? Nobody had. She pushed back out to the other side and walked the length of the restaurant, the bar, the private dining room, the corridor near the bathrooms. She checked every face. She looked for someone anxious, searching, guilty, someone who looked like Noah. Nothing. That tightening in her chest was getting harder to breathe around. Your dad, she said to Noah, keeping her voice easy. Does he come here a lot? Sometimes. Noah said. They were walking slower now. His small legs were getting tired. He has meetings here. He always says it's just one meeting. He paused. He always says it won't take long. Crystal looked down at him. Does he say that a lot? That it won't take long. Noah thought about it with the kind of seriousness only a 6-year-old can bring to a simple question. Every time, he said. She didn't say anything to that. But something moved through her, not quite anger, not quite sadness. Something in between that had no clean name. They stopped near the front entrance. Crystal pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped outside onto the top step, Noah's hand still in hers. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. The street was slick and shining under the streetlights. A line of cars sat along the curb. Taxis, a rideshare, and at the far end, idling without its lights on, a black SUV so polished it reflected the whole street back like a mirror. A man was standing beside it. Tall, tailored dark suit, phone in one hand. The other hand pressed flat against the side of the car, like he needed something to hold on to. He was pacing 2 steps left, 2 steps right, staring at the phone screen like he could make it ring through willpower alone. Crystal felt Noah go completely still beside her. Then Noah made a sound, not quite a word, not quite a cry. Something in between, something that came from a place deeper than language. Daddy. And he ran. Crystal watched him go. Down the steps, across the wet pavement, the apron flapping loose around his shoulders. The man heard the sound, that one small word, and his whole body changed. The phone dropped to his side. His head came up. And the moment he saw Noah running toward him, something broke open on his face that no suit and no SUV and no amount of money could compose back into calm. He dropped to his knees on the wet pavement, right there, on the ground, in his expensive suit in the drizzle, without hesitating for a single second. Noah crashed into him, and Marcus Ellison wrapped both arms around his son and held him so tight Crystal could see it from the top of the steps. She could see his shoulders shaking. She could see his jaw pressed against the top of Noah's head. She could see the way his hands kept moving, checking the back of Noah's neck, his small shoulders, his arms, the way parents touch their children when they've been terrified, cataloging them back into safety. Crystal stood at the top of those steps and watched. She had no job to go back to. She knew that. Mr. Donovan had made that clear enough. She was standing outside in her server uniform in the drizzle with an empty apron tie hanging from her hand, and she had nothing left to show for tonight except a little boy who let go of her hand and found his father. She told herself that was enough. She was almost ready to turn around and go back inside, to collect her things when Marcus Ellison looked up. His eyes found her immediately, like he already knew where to look. His face was still wrecked, eyes red, jaw tight, but he was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not gratitude yet. Not quite. Something more complicated than that. Something that looked like a man seeing himself from the outside for the very first time. He didn't say anything. Neither did she. But she held his gaze and didn't look away. And in that long, wet, quiet moment on the steps of the Meridian, something shifted between two strangers. Something that felt, in its strange and certain way, like the beginning of something neither of them had planned. Crystal walked down the steps. She didn't rush. She didn't hang back either. She walked like a woman who had already lost the thing she was afraid of losing and had discovered, somewhere on the way down those steps, that she was still standing, still breathing, still herself. Marcus was getting to his feet. When she reached him, Noah was still wrapped around his father's neck, face buried in his collar, the apron now trailing on the wet ground. Marcus's suit was damp at the knees. His phone was still in his hand. He looked, for all his height and his tailored clothes and his polished car, like a man who had just been shaken loose from something he thought was solid. Crystal stopped in front of him. "Where were you?" she asked. "Just that. No softening. No apology wrapped around it. 3 words, clean and direct. The way you say something that needs to be said out loud before it can be dealt with." Marcus blinked. Nobody talked to him like that. She could see it on his face. The slight flinch of someone who hadn't heard a simple, honest question in a very long time. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked down at Noah for a second, and then back at her. "I was inside," he said. There was a call. An important call." "He was on the floor," Crystal said, behind a planter near table 7. His phone was dead. He'd been sitting there alone long enough to go from scared to terrified. She paused. "He's 6 years old." Marcus's jaw tightened, not with anger at her. She could tell the difference. It was a jaw of a man tightening against himself, against a version of himself that had just been described back to him in plain language. "He told me," Crystal continued, and her voice was quieter now but no less steady, "that you always say it won't take long." She let that sit for a moment in the drizzle between them. "He said you say that every time." The silence that followed was the loudest thing on that street. Noah hadn't moved. He was still holding onto his father's neck with both arms, and Marcus's hand had come up to rest on his son's back. Slow, heavy, the hand of the man who was finally feeling the full weight of what he was holding. I didn't know he was... Marcus started. I know you didn't know, Crystal said. That's the part that matters. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Really looked. The way people rarely look at each other. Without performing, without calculating, without deciding what to say next. He just looked at her. This woman in a server uniform with rain on her shoulders, who had sat on a restaurant floor with his son and wrapped her apron around him and walked every corner of that building to find a man who hadn't even come looking. You work here, he said slowly. Not anymore, Crystal said. And she said it plainly, without drama, without asking for sympathy. Something moved through Marcus's expression. Because of Noah. Because of Noah. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they were different. Clearer. The way eyes look after something in a person finally settles into its right place. I'm sorry, he said. And it came out rough and unpolished and real. Not the kind of apology a man like Marcus Ellison was probably used to giving. Not a smooth, managed, press release apology. A real one. The kind that cost something. Crystal nodded once. She accepted it the same way she delivered the truth, without ceremony, without making it bigger than it needed to be. Noah finally lifted his head from his father's collar. His eyes were dry now. He looked at Crystal with that same serious, searching expression he'd worn on the floor behind the planter, and then he reached out one small hand toward her. She took it. He held both of them at once, his father's hand in hers, and he looked back and forth between them like he was checking one more time that both things were real. They were. 3 days later, Crystal got a phone call from a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer. She was sitting in her apartment in yesterday's clothes, halfway through updating her resume. Trying not to think about the fact that she had given 3 years to a place that had replaced her before her uniform was even dry. She had told herself she didn't regret it. She mostly believed herself. But mostly is a long way from completely, and late at night, completely felt very far away. She answered the call. The voice on the other end was calm and direct, and she recognized it immediately. This is Marcus Ellison, he said. I'd like to meet with you, if you're willing. There's something I want to offer you, not as a thank you. I want to be clear about that. A pause. I've seen how you handle crisis. I've seen how you treat people when it costs you something. That's not something you can train. I need someone like that. Crystal was quiet for a moment. Outside her window, the city moved and hummed the way it always did, indifferent and alive. What kind of offer? She asked. Director of Guest Experience, he said. Ellison Grand Hotel. Opening its new wing in 4 months. Full salary, full authority over your department, and the freedom to build it the way you think it should be built. She almost laughed, not because it was funny, because 3 days ago she was carrying salad plates, and now a billionaire was offering her a director's chair. Why me? She asked. Because of what Noah told me, Marcus said, and his voice shifted just slightly, just enough. He said that when he was scared and alone and didn't know what to do, you sat down on the floor next to him. He said you didn't make him feel like a problem. A beat of silence. I've been trying to figure out how to make my son feel that way for 2 years. I think you understand something that I've been too busy to learn. Crystal pressed her hand flat against her kitchen table. She thought about Mr. Donovan and his clipboard. She thought about 3 years of double shifts and cold soup complaints and a promotion that had dissolved like sugar in rain. She thought about Noah's hand in hers on those wet steps. She thought about what it means to choose the right thing when the right thing is expensive. Okay, she said. I'll meet with you. The office on the 14th floor of Ellison Grand Hotel smelled like fresh paint and possibility. Crystal sat at her new desk on her first morning and looked out at the city stretched wide and glittering below her. Her name was already on the door. Her name on a door. She had run her fingers over the letters twice before coming inside. On top of her keyboard was a folded piece of paper. She opened it carefully. It was a drawing in crayon, messy and bright, and completely serious the way only a child's drawing can be. 2 figures standing on some steps, one tall, one small. a third figure between them with locks and a uniform, and at the bottom, in the careful, unsteady handwriting of a 6-year-old who had practiced each letter, "You did not leave me." Crystal sat with those 4 words for a long time. The city glowed below her. Somewhere across town, a little boy was getting ready for school, and his father, for the first time in a long time, was the one taking him. The meeting could wait. The call could wait. Some things, it turns out, cannot. Crystal folded the note and put it in the top drawer of her desk, right where she would see it every morning. Then she got to work. The real wealth was never in the building. It was in the moment someone chose to stay. If this story moved you, if Crystal's courage reminded you of something true, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. Every share gets this into the hands of someone who might need it most.